Hi everyone, this week we've got Dino on from the Glasgow Grooming Company. Dino actually is my barber and my son's barber, and the reason why I was keen to get him on the podcast is
You wanted a free haircut.
I wanted a free haircut, yeah, my son wanted a free haircut. But no, Dino's got a fantastic personal brand. Anyone who doesn't know what personal brand is, it's basically how you carry yourself, your values, how you live and breathe. And he's taken that into his own business, which is absolutely fantastic. You need to check it out. Check out his Instagram page, check out his site. His ethos, his work ethic, his dedication, even to the point where he's just brought on Ross in his team. And it's taken him about 2.5 months to find Ross because he wanted him to basically be the best complement of him and his brand as much as he can be, because he wanted that consistency. So if you're looking about starting your own business, if you've got your own business just now and you're thinking about upscaling, if you're thinking about having a bricks and mortar, and certainly listen to this podcast, he talks about how COVID impacted his business and how he wants to take the business further and beyond. Enjoy. Hi everyone, thank you. Welcome back to the Purpose Over Profit podcast. This week we've got a fantastic guest on again. His name is Dino, but he can probably give us a bit more reflection into his full name. He is a barber that my son and I use, and he's a fantastic business called the Glasgow Grooming Company, based in Glasgow. And just his brand, his ethos, everything, just absolutely love it. How are you, Dino?
I'm great, thanks. Yeah, good to see you guys as well, Chris and Darren. So I as Chris said, I run the Glasgow Grooming Company, which is based in the South Side of Glasgow in Battlefield, and it's just a wee local barbers just now, but we're kind of slowly expanding.
So I guess first of all, actually, because all we normally get a guest to do is to speak about their background and stuff like that. But I want to quickly touch upon your full name. Is it Konstantinos?
So Dino is for short, and it's we use it just a shortened version of Konstantinos. It's a bit of a mouthful for here in Britain. Usually, in Greece, where my family come from, quite often, nicknames are used to shorten the name and to sort of individualize people from others, because usually it's like Greek Orthodox, we only have a certain amount of names. You don't really get names coming in that are like fashionable or new names or old names. It's usually like a certain set of names, and it usually comes from the grandfather or the grandmother. So we kind of shorten the names and put nicknames in just to kind of differentiate. So not if you say Constantino, half the room will turn around.
So what the nicknames wise? So what made you Dino then? Was there something?
It's just a name that my family have called me from when I was really little.
Yeah.
Just a child, and it's just stuck, and that's what it's always been, and it does confuse people.
And did you grow up in Greece yourself, Dino? Before we get into this.
Oh, I grew up in the northwest.
Wow.
I grew up in between Cheshire and North Wales.
That's a bit far away from Greece, I guess, as well.
Well, you'll probably pick up little bits of. So I've lived down south. I have lived in Greece for a number of years, and I pick up little bits of my accent. It's all a bit of a patchwork quilt.
Yeah.
Such,
And I guess first off, then, for our listeners, because obviously you've touched upon you're a barber, which we're going to come on to in a second about the style and the look of the brand and all that kind of stuff, which people can check out as well, which I think is fantastic. But I mean, how did you find your way into this career path, I feel like? Because obviously you've got an experienced background, so it'd be good for our listeners to understand how you got into it and probably some of the places you've worked, for example.
Yeah, so before I became a barber, I was actually I worked in hospitality and I was a chef.
Wow.
And a bit of everything really. I worked with my parents, and initially they had a takeaway. They had a fish and chip shop all through my growing up in my childhood. So every weekend, if we wanted any pocket money or anything like that, we wouldn't just get given money like that. We had to get in peeled some potatoes, or help with deliveries, or anything really, just to get a bit of spending money. I suppose that's an important lesson as well. That your parents can give their kids not just to expect, the handout. You've got to do something to earn some money.
Do you think it also maybe like demystified business for you as well? Because it sounds like, certainly for me, that'd have been something that I was like, oh, I couldn't run a business. I couldn't go and set up set up a shop and kind of go and do that. But I guess because you were in there at an early age, how did that impact you?
Yeah, I think you're right in that sense. I think if you see your parents, running a business, you wouldn't think, oh, I couldn't do that, because you can actually see it being done. But I think on the flip side as well, it also gives you like quite a grounded sense of what it takes to run a business, like the dedication, the hours that they have to work, and the sacrifice they've got to make with their social life, and certain meeting other family members, because the business won't run itself. So the business won't put money in your bank account without you doing anything. You've got to put the hours in. So yeah, absolutely.
And I guess there's something in there around the values it gives you. Could you mention about kind of hard work, determination, and actually even working all hours as well? And I guess that's quite different from bricks and mortar. Because I remember in the conversation we had in the shop where you were telling me, I think your dad was he a captain in the Merchant Navy? Was that it?
He was in the Merchant Navy. He was an electrical engineer.
So he was away, I guess, quite a lot as well. And then he came home.
Yeah, back then in the 70s and 80s, they didn't like now. They have you work so many weeks on, so many weeks off, and it's all pretty standard. But back then, it would have been like months and months, over a year sometimes, that he was away from home. So really long periods of time, and it's kind of what prompted him really to set up his own business, just to be home more and see family. Although he was home more, but he was working a lot.
I was going to say it's like it's physically here, but like maybe not actually around.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So I'm intrigued as well. Does that mean that you are kind of sick to the teeth of fish and chips now, or have you got over that stage?
Yeah. So quite often my partner will suggest, "Oh, what do you want for a takeaway? What should we get in?" And I fancy fish and chips, and quite often I'll say, "Oh, I really don't." I really don't ever fancy fish and chips. I'll get something else. So she's got to go to, if she goes and gets it, she's got to go to two different locations.
That's what happens in our house as well. I'm vegetarian, so my wife goes different places, so does my kids. But I'm intrigued then. So you went from, obviously you worked with your mum and dad in their shop, and you've became a chef in different roles. So that's quite a different range. So they're all quite creative as well, I guess, as well.
I suppose so, yeah. In their own ways, yeah. There's a bit, quite a lot of creativity there, and it's not it's not that different from standing behind the chair to standing in a kitchen. But obviously, you've got to work on a different skill set, and that takes quite a long time to develop that. It's very personal as well, being like one-on-one with a client. They kind of have to like you in some way, because the aim of the game is to slowly kind of build up more clients, and you want them to to come back.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to touch upon this in a minute, because obviously I've seen it on Instagram as well. You smashed your 100 5-star reviews the other day as well on Google.
Yeah, no, so like I've got a booking app, and clients can log on to the website and book in, and I just applied a bit of clever tech, so it just set, like, every time a client comes to the shop and they leave, it automatically sends them a wee notification to leave some feedback of their experience. So thankfully, it's a bit nerve-wracking, because you're a bit worried. Oh, I hope the feedback is positive, but thankfully so far, it seems to be working out.
Yeah, no, that's good. I've seen that like before. It'll be like location. If they've got location services on, it'll if they're so far away, then the push notification will go, or if they're within distance, the push notification will go. But it's important maybe to get that.
Yeah, and then like supermarkets use the same thing, because we're all like, oh, I've been to Tesco, and every time you go to Tesco or Sainsbury's, you get that
nectar or something like that. Yeah,
how rate your experience. Hopefully not you don't come to the barbers as often as Tesco, so it's not as annoying. Hopefully,
yeah. And it's also good, I guess, to get that as soon as possible after you've walked out. Where you're doing all that. I don't know if it's the same for girls as guys as girls. It's good to get your perspective on it, but women will go there. It's almost like therapy, kind of coming out of there and feeling like they're like so much better. I guess the same experience really should be the case as someone walking out of your barbers.
Absolutely, and you've got to always keep that in mind as well. And customers want to hear your story, but it's also important to ask them about how their life is going, and always try and put a positive spin on everything, so they are leaving the shop feeling positive, rather than if you're going to be putting your personal problems or issues on them, they're not going to be leaving, even if they've got a fantastic haircut and a fantastic beard trim. They're not going to be leaving feeling positive if you're not positive with them, so I think that's really important.
It's such a good point. I'm thinking back to a few that I used to go in Thornley Bank when I lived up there, and actually I've had an all right. I've moved down to Stuart and I've probably had an okay experience so far, but we are like, oh, I've had this going on and that going on. You're like, oh, like, I'm going to come here to get moaned at. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's it,
Doesn't matter what it's like.
Whatever personal issues you may have, you kind of have to separate your personal, those negative aspects of your personal life, and not bring that to the business, and that's where consistency is important as well. And it's not just consistent like with the quality, consistent with yourself and your moods as well. So
sorry, all I was going to say is you were helping out in the fish and chip shop. Don't want to see another fish supper ever again. What kind of then? How does the transition from kind of there into I guess hairdressing, where we're kind of at right now?
There's a really brilliant course based in London. Actually, they've got a few locations now, but when I first went there like 10 years ago, they just had the one location in Covent Garden. And I looked up online after one of my siblings recommended I had a look, and they said to me, I went to this barber's, and I thought, it's a great experience. And I thought, I think you could be good at something like that. And I just went, what are you talking about? And I disregarded it, but then the seed was planted a wee bit in my mind, and I just kept going back to it, and eventually I looked it up online, and I found this course, and it was a company called the London School of Barbering, and I thought, I'm going to have a look, and then I saw the price of it, and I thought, it's a lot of money. I think it was about £5,000 back then. It's probably gone up a bit more since then, I imagine. And I thought, that's quite an investment to make. I think I'll just think about that for a while. But I thought while I'm thinking about it, I went along to my local barber shop, and it was just a like a neighborhood barber's, nothing fancy. Just you walk in and you wait.
Yeah.
And I went and I got a haircut there, and I thought I'll ask the owner, would it be all right if I just went along on my days off and just kind of stood and watched and got a feel for the environment, and just to see whether I would like it, because before I made, I spent a lot of money on training, and then if you spend all that kind of money and time and then realize that's not for me. But anyway, I went there a couple of days a week and just stood there for a few hours, brushed the floor, chatted to the other stylists, just to see how they felt about what they were doing. And then I thought, you know what, I think I probably would. It's worth putting the money in and seeing where it goes, seeing where it takes me.
So it was never a case of looking for a cheaper option. It was like, no, like that is the place to go.
That one had the best reviews.
So it was case of whether you feel like if you're going to do it, you're going to do it in the best place. It wasn't a case of like, oh, we'll maybe find a halfway house somewhere that, is okay. It's a little cheaper for you to do it. It was like, no, if you're going to do it, you want to go to the place with the best reviews.
So I just thought, you know what, I want to go to the best place and just quite a leap of faith, really. But thankfully, it did work out.
Paid off.
Yeah. That's what I like as well, because there's something about Darren talks about this as well, about investing in yourself. So Darren's got his own property business, but on the side of it, it was about 20 grand or something you had to spend, Darren, on training.
About 28 grand, and it was heavily, like there was NLP, it was like heavy sale, hard sell on it, and all of it on credit cards. Hasten to add, so. But
again, it's paying dividends now because he's got a great property portfolio. I've got my own business as well. We've got to invest time and money and all that sweat, blood and tears. Yeah. So it's all about putting that in. And I even liked about how you mentioned cleaning the floors and sweeping the floors. I always remember when I worked in McDonald's when I was a student, they always talked about the franchise manager that came in. And in the McDonald's if you want to become a McDonald's franchise manager, you basically can buy into it, but you've got to start off from the bottom. And you don't tell anyone that you're going to be the franchise manager. You basically are there sweeping the floors, making the burgers, all this kind of stuff, doing all the really dirty jobs so that you can appreciate and respect every level you worked at. So that when you make it to the top, you've got that kudos, because people say it's easy on the way up, but it's hard on the way down if you don't respect people. And it sounds like you were trying to get that respect at the very ground level as well.
Absolutely. I think McDonald's is a really good example as well of businesses and how to run a business. It's it's lasting the test of time. And it's adapted to changes, and they start doing delivery, and just so they can keep up with all these new companies appearing, and that's right. I think you need to look at can I run the business on my own if I didn't have if someone couldn't turn up that day, or it's no good going in straight in at the top, and if you get all your staff walk out, which could it could happen. How could you manage?
So you basically dived in, invested in yourself, and then once you've finished that investment piece, is this when you started to kind of do the rounds in some of the top barber places, or did you again have a card?
No, actually the complete opposite. So I went and I did the course. I finished the course, and it was my brother-in-law that said, "Oh, I know a barbershop down the road, just a local one. Another one. You go in, you just wait. Really kind of bog standard barbers." And I was walking along the street one day, and I saw the shop, and I said, "Oh, that must be the place." And I walked in, and I said, "Oh, any chance you're looking for a barber? I've just finished the course." And the guy kind of, I put some smart clothes on just to look a bit. I didn't have the big beard back then either, And I thought, try and make a good impression. So I walked in, and the guy kind of looked me up and down and said, I don't really have anything at the moment, but keep in touch. And so I was like, all right. And I must have made some kind of impression on him, because he got in touch with me. And I actually said to him, I don't mind, coming along, and I don't want any money initially. I just want to help out and, do whatever I can. So I just kind of went in, and he let me go in anyway. And then it actually turned out that it wasn't the same shop that my brother-in-law had mentioned. I went in totally the wrong shop, but it worked out in that sense. So I think I started off like painting his walls or something. I was painting his walls. So I used to go in, really early, and I'd be there waiting, before any of them turned up. And straight away I'd go in there and I'd mop the floors, and, clean down everything. And because in my mind I thought, right, I can't really offer much in the cutting hair part of the thing. So I'll offer what I can with what the other kind of skills I've got, and make myself, you know, a bit of an asset if possible. So that's what I did. You know, and they let me, you know, cut like some of the older clients, some of the retired, you know, the OAP clients who didn't have much on the top.
There's only so far wrong you can go, right?
The old comb overs.
I mean, how was that for you? Like, how humbling was that coming from this prestige? It sounds like, you know, London School of Barbering, and you're in your local barbers cutting the OAPs here. No disrespect to them, obviously, but how was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, like initially, it wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I thought, you know what, you know, if I'm doing all these comb overs, I'm going to be the best comb over guy. Is
that not one of the hardest things to do, a comb over cut? That must be so hard to do, a comb over cut.
Yeah,
I mean, where there's original on the side there. I am the OAP guy.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be the you know, they often say the same thing. Oh, you know, mainly, you know, plenty off the sides, but hardly anything off the top. That'd be the comb over code word.
Oh, that's a shame. So then you've obviously moved into the kind of Pall Mall barbers and the really high end kind of barbers not long after that. And is that where you kind of feel because obviously, because I know your barbershops, I know the values you've got, I know how hard it was to find Ross because of the kind of, we spoke about that, about the kind of the level of service you want to provide. Is this where you've taken all these learnings from these kind of top end barbershops down south to now implement into your own?
So there are definitely aspects of, like, you know, the high end places, yeah, absolutely, but also you know, all the different bits of experience that I've had. It's good. It's also, you know, it's good to take away the parts that I like, but also some of the parts that you know, the way business owners were running the business that I didn't always agree with, but being able to see what impact that sort of negative side had on other members of staff and myself, and seeing if I could, you know, run a business and try and take away, you know, as much as I could of that, and just mainly focus on the good side of things, like, you know, like fairer pay for people. I've just signed up to the living wage as well, just to get the
fantastic
the certificate and put that on the wall in the shop. I'm not usually one for putting certificates on the wall, but I think that's quite important. It is to me anyway. But also, you know, just respecting professionals for what they are, instead of, you know, trying to take advantage of people as well. Because over the years, I've worked in, you know, all these different places, and that does happen quite a lot. You know, you feel like you are taken advantage of quite a lot. Well, I didn't really want to bring that into the business.
And that's the hard part, because I used to work in the Glasgow city centre. So with Darren, I used to go to really expensive barbers, but then the person that was cutting my hair, they done a bit of a breakaway. I don't know what you call it, a breakaway. So they were taking a lot of their clients with them because they weren't happy with the level of staff or the service they were getting and the respect and the time.
Yeah,
and they broke away for that reason, and they took those principles they didn't like and implemented it into that place. But then, unfortunately, when I moved away from the city and I'm now in the south side like yourself, it's hard then to keep going into the city for the haircut when you're not in the city, which is hard. But I can understand that, because even, I'm not going to share the company name or the stories, but there were certain things you were hearing that it just wasn't the way things should be done, even from a very human level.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think as a business owner, you've got to realize that, and, you know, try and not only make yourself competitive with, you know, in the client aspect, but also as an employer as well. You think about, like, how can I measure up as an employer compared to, you know, a million other barbershops in the city, you know, and you've got to make yourself competitive in that aspect, you know.
And that's something I'm really curious about, like that aspect of making it competitive. Because I'm curious to say, right, I'd love to know your thoughts on the experience that you're trying to get across in your shop. I've never been. When I was younger, I remember like 2021, I used to go and get, I think I let someone shave a triangle and bleach it in my hair and frosted tips, all of this stuff.
What?
It's like something out of Eurotrash or something. But I remember that was like, I don't know, I was paying like 25 quid, and I'd go in and get my hair washed, and amazing, and I'd get a beer that I'd be able to sit, and I thought, that's tremendous. That is getting my hair cut. And I've just regressed, I think, over time back to the local barber, sit, wait, and get it. And I'm usually at a Turkish barber's, but I'd love to know, just from your perspective, just where your market is and that type of service that you're providing. Where's your edge, kind of thing?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I used to work in Glasgow city centre myself for about a year and a half or so before I opened my own place. And you know, every day, if I wasn't cycling, and I'm mostly just cycling to town, actually, for a bit of exercise, but you know, every time I'd get on the train, I'd travel from Cathcart to Central, and I noticed, you know, how many young people were getting on the train at Mount Florida. And I remember thinking, oh, look at that, you know, that's quite a big market I can see. And, you know, a bit more of a upmarket barbers is going to appeal more to, I would say, that bracket between, you know, early 20s up until, like, you know, mid 40s. I'd probably say the majority of the clients are between, you know, 25 and 35. Either you know, they're like first-time homeowners. Not too many renting, actually. I would say they're mostly like young professionals.
Yeah.
And then as they, you know, like yourself, as they get a bit older, they might settle down and have a child, and then they gradually start to move a bit further out of the city.
Exactly.
To, you know,
I was on Battlefield Road.
Yeah.
I was on Battlefield Road. Then
so
I was
like,
in Newlands. Then I was Thornley Bank. Now I'm out in the sticks.
Your priorities change. You know, and you're not too concerned about getting a fresh haircut because you're going out the weekends all the time, or so.
So is that the kind of Gen Zs? Is that what you call them, Gen Z?
I don't know.
I think that's
you've coined the phrase. I just thought you were sitting there all smug. So you're like, oh, I'm in the like 25 to 35 age bracket.
Yeah, I believe that's a Gen Z, where you're happy to spend a bit of money, look after yourself. You're thinking about the planet.
Yeah.
You're thinking about your ethics, your values, and you're happy to spend money on yourself as long as it's something that you think is positive. And they're looking at deeper relationships, which is the conversations, the kind of therapeutic session having with your barber, instead of the transactional ones where you go in, haircut, and straight back out. So that sounds
absolutely. You know, and that market's changed quite a lot in the last few years. You know, and it's not, you know, it's sort of gravitated away from the traditional barbers. You go in, you wait, you're 10 minutes, you're in and out. You get a quick, you know, a tissue in your hand, and you're gone. You know, hair all over your face, and it's very much, you know, and the same with a lot of other markets. It's become more about the experience rather than a transaction, in a quick transaction, and you're just ticking a box, get a haircut, and then you're away. It's definitely more experience based, you know.
And you mentioned about standing out, and now Darren saying about how do you find your marketplace, and Darren obviously lived in Battlefield for a while, and slowly he's moved further and further and further away, which is totally fine because he's got a lovely place now as well. But one other reason to stand out is you're obviously in that great bit. It's called Monument and Hill as you walk up. There's a great coffee shop across from me as well, the Green and Grind, which is fantastic. But even as you look into your building, you've got, I've seen this to Darren, you've got these kind of lovely Wizard of Oz, like kind of emerald green metro tiles on the wall. You've got these really funky, cool parrot lamps. You've got this antique kind of style and set. It's a really different style you wouldn't expect to see in that kind of area.
Yeah, so the idea really was, like, for example, say if you're walking down the street and you walk past a bakery and you see the bakers, you see the bakers working away and they're making, buns, and then you see a display cabinet with all these buns, and you think, and then you walk past another baker's and you see, just the buns in the window. You don't see anyone working away. I think, which one are you're more inclined to go to? You're more inclined to go to, the place where you can see that, the people working, and you think, and it automatically just kind of drags, brings people in, like a bit of a moth to a lamp. So you can see, it's got the big windows, it's got a big front. You can see I was cutting hair. And I think also, if you go into a barber, it'd be, you want to go to someone that looks like a barber as well, but also to bring back something that kind of reminiscent of something familiar. So like the green Metro tiles reminded me of inside the tenement flats in the area.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I wanted, some kind of familiarity, because I think like the way people's minds.
It's been a nice close that. I never had that in my close, but the tenement I stayed in, they didn't have that close. But
yeah, I think people like something reminiscent. Of something. I think, like, if you look at, for example, a lot of the movies that are coming out in the cinema, they're often remakes of old movies that we know and we love, and I think that it seems to be a big market just now. So like old school values and old school aesthetics, but with a modern twist as well. Not like stuck back in a bygone era.
It's even a conversation topic, because I was sitting there with my son, because in fact the reason why we went to your barbers is my son got a haircut from the place we used to go to, and the person that used to cut his hair was off. So we got this other chap in who tried to cut his son's hair. He's got really straight long hair, and he just done it like a bowl cut, but chopped the wrong lengths everywhere. I took it to your barbers, and I think you went on that day with somebody else, but they said this is going to take about 2 to 3 haircuts to get it right, because there's that much damage in the way the person's cut it. And I've never heard somebody explain it that way before. And I really respected that straight away. So those values are there. Even when I was sitting in the shop, I remember looking, and you get these antique old phones, the ones that you used to mouthpiece and the earpiece to your ear. And I was explaining to my son that used to be a phone. And he's like, what are you talking about? So you've brought that old and new. And I just love that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, like, old from the outside, but also, we use a lot of like modern technology, to the booking system. Yeah. Like appointments online. You don't have to speak to anyone. I think like a lot of young people, they hardly ever speak on the phone these days. It's all by text, isn't it? So like, if they seem to want to minimize like interaction in a certain way. So yeah, just kind of incorporating that and making it really easy for people to use the system and to book in.
That's really interesting, man. It's something like, again, out of curiosity, how do you assess? How do you do, like the age old? It's like, the introvert just wants to come in, sit there, cut my hair, and then go. Do you ever just get a feeling when someone's coming in and they're like, yeah, they're not up for much chat, or like, do you think it's a bit of a challenge to kind of bring them out of that, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do tend to chat to most of my clients quite a lot. I don't often do a totally silent haircut, and I suppose I just try and find something kind of to talk about, something they're interested in. So I'll ask them quite a few different questions, maybe gauge what their interests are. I think if all else fails, can talk about their hair, because that's what they're there for, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I think eventually they do. If they keep coming back, eventually they do. A lot of the introvert people, they do tend to warm up and sort of come out of their shell a little bit, which is what I found really.
And I wonder as well, because obviously with COVID, what's happened with COVID, I know I know I've spoke to you before about this, getting my haircut as well, about the struggles you faced with COVID, about being shut and trying to keep yourself busy, trying to keep the business going, then coming back with all the restrictions in place, trying to work with the restrictions. I know you've been frustrated, even we can talk about the beard cutting, how that's a big part of your business and how the restrictions made it harder. But how do you see, I mean, talking about some of the restrictions you've had, how you faced them, and then how the future's looking for you as well, because I know you just brought on Ross into the business. Is it Ross? Yeah.
Yeah, it is Ross, yeah. Yeah, so, I'll be honest with you, when the restrictions came in for beards, I was a bit upset about it, but I also, I can understand, because obviously, like with COVID, a lot of the transmission comes, through the respiratory system.
Yeah.
So, keeping the mask on obviously is the best thing you can do, and then further down the line, I definitely saw a slowdown in trade, because quite a big part of the business is beards, and there were a few customers upset and kept asking me, when are you going to be doing beards again? And I just had to follow the guidelines really, and just hope it wasn't for a really long time, which it was a few months, which is not ideal.
Was that something you were able to get compensated for? There's the hospitality trade. It was this war chest that they just found at Christmas there because they had to put in extra restrictions. Did you get anything over and above? Because they're basically saying
so when my business was closed for a total of 9.5 months altogether.
Wow.
And so we had 2 4-month lockdowns and a 6-week lockdown, and I did receive help. There was furlough that helped a lot, and some grants as well, which I applied for. And my business is quite small, so I don't, outgoings wise, it's I managed, to kind of get through it. And my partner, she works for the NHS, so she continued to work right through as well. So that helped. It wasn't, my son, he was going to nursery, and the nursery was closed as well as myself. So I was quite busy looking after him every day while my partner went out to work.
So I guess there's good and bad. You get the bad because you're trying to build your business up and grow it, but at the same time you're getting the good because you're getting some forced quality time with your son.
Absolutely. I think it did set back the business as well, because a lot of the clients I worked to kind of make regular clients. A lot of their priorities changed, and a lot moved away from the city and they moved out. But the ones that moved away, that left their flats, they were replaced by others. So I just kind of carried on and built back up again.
I've seen as well since you've been back. We're going to talk about Ross in a second, but one of the frustrations for me, but then something I've learned, is my own lack of planning. Darren knows this as well quite well, but my lack of planning sometimes is if I try and book a haircut with yourself, it will be booked out 3 to 4 weeks in advance, 2 weeks in advance normally, because people now respect the quality of the haircuts they get with you. So actually, since every time you've reopened, you've been slammed pretty much non-stop, haven't you, until you brought Ross on board?
I have, yeah. And, bringing Ross on board, that's helped a lot with the waiting list as well. Yeah. So now, now there isn't such a long waiting list because there's 2 of us, and, a lot of the new clients, I've set my booking system. So for example, if you're a new client and you just sign up to the booking system, physically you can't actually book in with myself. You have to book in with Ross, and that's helped to kind of free things up and reduce the waiting time, because it's not ideal for someone to, if you want a haircut, it's not ideal to have to wait for 2 weeks. I suppose it looks good. You think, oh, look, that guy's, he must be really good. He's busy, but there's a certain percentage that would go somewhere else. They wouldn't wait as long. So that's, getting someone else on, that's definitely helped. It's helped increase revenue and free up the booking system as well.
Yeah, so I mean, we do value scarcity. I mean, we were talking about books of the year, but that one that we were reading around influence is one of the key kind of elements of what influences us to like purchase or like as consumers to do things. And scarcity is right up there as something that, you know, if you can't break in, it's like, must be. But I guess as a business owner, you're trying to find that sweet spot where you're like, you want to have that scarcity maybe and bring people to you, but you don't want to, you know, say, I saw this, I'm going elsewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think like, I remember somebody telling me a story about when Gordon Ramsay opened a restaurant in Glasgow. They opened up and they were all just sitting around. They didn't have any clients. And every time clients were phoning up to book a table, they were telling the clients they were fully booked. So they were actually losing money, but they were aware that, you know, scarcity creates demand, like you say.
And I don't know how long that restaurant stayed open, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a few. I think one of his restaurants in London, Claridge's, closed as well. And I think it's just a sign of the times, really. I suppose sign of the credit crunch, and you know, it was another victim of that, really.
And obviously scarcity, you don't want to manipulate it and like fabricate it almost. It's like scarcity when you've gone through a global pandemic and you're trying to run a business and not have higher costs than what you need. That's usually where the scarcity will come from, because you want to just kind of get that balance right and not be overstaffed.
Yeah, like you say, I think as a result of whether it be, you know, COVID or Brexit, we're seeing scarcity everywhere now and a really high demand for things, you know, from some products that I can't get hold of because they're made in Italy. Seems to be a lot more difficult, and it's that scarcity is creating more demand. I think so, creating even more scarcity.
I guess in a way, like, because obviously you're a service-driven business, which is fantastic. So that scarcity was right because of the level of service you were offering. And I remember when you were talking about trying to bring somebody on board, you put a few adverts out and you're getting people who just came out of like uni or Barbering uni, whatever it's called, putting their hand up saying, I'm ready to join. But you get such a high expectation, not of just yourself and of the shop, but if somebody you want to bring on board, because like either for my business or Darren's business, they're representing you and your brand. So I know it took you a bit of time to find Ross, and you mentioned I'm sure you're working 9 to 6, 5 days a week most of the time, plus you're trying to do a bit of training for whoever was going to come on board. So how's that transition been now that you've been able to step back a wee bit and now have somebody beside you?
Yeah, I haven't really stepped back, to be honest. I'm still doing the same working hours, but it's reduced. Because I was working from 9 till 6 on a Thursday, 9 till 7, and I was every day was fully booked back to back to haircut after haircut, and it was taking its toll. But now I've got the second person in. That's it's taken away that back to back, and my energy levels are much higher now, and I feel a bit better. And it's all it's all, like I said, it's generating even more clients as well.
And what you mentioned at the start as well, just around the aspirations of the business as well, because obviously you're in a growth spurt just now, which is fantastic. Now you've got Ross on board. You had that delay with COVID. What are you looking to try and do with the business? What's their kind of next plans?
Yeah, so like I have like a bigger plan, but I usually divide it up into smaller steps, so that just now the next step is to get Ross built up, get him busy, and then I may decide to maybe look at a second premises, depending on how things go with COVID, really, because that dictates a lot of the way the business has grown, and it's set me back a long time from the original plan. but I suppose you've got to be ready for. You never know what's around the corner. What's the John Lennon saying is life happens when you're busy making plans. And you're going to get curveballs thrown at you, and obviously COVID's a huge curveball. But I think if you could manage to get through it and still come out on top and keep going. I don't think you shouldn't be too scared of the future. If you do well enough to continue to grow, I think you must be doing something all right, something well, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of thinking that we need, as individuals, as humans, it's great to have something to look forward to. Doesn't matter what, even if you've got great aspirations to get there, that shouldn't be a full stop. It's kind of to always have something that you're looking optimistically towards, to build for, to grow, to achieve. I think is always I think we need that as humans, because when we stop having that, usually we that's us. Time's up.
Well, that's absolutely. I think if you're not moving forward, you're standing still, and then eventually you will go backwards.
Yeah,
it's Newton's law, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it sounds like you've obviously got that resilience. It's just a slight delay. It's hopefully just a kind of kink in the armour for now that eventually we'll be able to get that second place and build up Ross as well. Because my last haircut was off Ross. I need one just now, but my last haircut was off Ross, and the quality of the service. I think he might be East Coast as well, Darren.
Yes, yeah.
He throws the odd A in, does he?
He does.
How's your haircut, eh? That's what everyone says that sounds like. But
a bit further up, it's your lugs, isn't it? A bit further up.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, actually, and I guess obviously the podcast, we call it purpose over profit. I mean, what's your take on that? Do you think it is purpose over profit, or is it purpose follows profit? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think as you say, purpose over profit. We all need to make a profit to run our business, but it's how you make a profit. And the reason I started is because I wanted to offer high quality haircuts, high quality service, but locally, rather than clients having to go into the city centre. They could get it in their area rather than that. So it was the main focus was on the on the quality, and I love what I do. So getting to do that every day, 5 days a week or 6 days a week sometimes. I'm happy. I'm happy in what I'm doing, and hopefully that the customers pick up on the energy of that when they come into the shop, but also the energy from the people working there as well. Because I think if you try and squeeze your whoever's working for you too much, the clients aren't stupid. They can pick up on that. They can pick up on an atmosphere, a bad atmosphere or a good atmosphere, I think. So yeah, absolutely.
I think as well, like you mentioned about not standing still, and I think this is even just a note to your own self about what you're doing. It's not just the haircuts, it's the experience. I've even seen the great neon signs you've had in the shop. You've got the signage getting updated in the windows. You dress up the shop as well for Christmas and all that. You give it a different feeling as well. So I think you're showing that you've always got to be on your game. It's not just like that bakery analogy you used as well. People want to see what's going on in the window because they're excited by it as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think you're concentrating on your what you do is on branding, and I think it's having, depending on what you're doing, but I think having a really clear brand that in just a few words if you can try to explain what you do and customers can see that, but also something that looks slightly different from think about how many barbershops there are out there, and often the customers have said to me they've walked from Shawlands where they live, and they've said, "Oh, I passed 7 different barbershops and God knows how many hairdressers to get to you." But what sets you apart from all that, all those different half a dozen places or even more? And I think it's something that's explains what you do, but it's also a bit different that maybe intrigues people and draws them into maybe want to find out a little bit more about you. I think it's important. Branding is, really important.
It's also important to see that you've seen as well your son get his first haircut ever in the shop, is that right? So there you go. Yeah, you got to be living proof to see put your son to get the first cut as well. Lovely long hair, by the way, as well.
Yeah. He was quite happy actually. He asked his mum. He wants to go back.
That's good. Customer retention's key.
Absolutely.
He's too young to leave a review yet on Google, but I'm sure that's probably the best.
No, he's not. Sure, Dino's got my Gmail account set up.
Well, Dino, thank you very much for taking the time out. I know when we asked
thanks for having me on. Absolutely.
I know when we asked you to come on the podcast, I think I spoke to you in November, and you said maybe end of October, and you said I'm pretty slammed for the next couple of months, and it's now January. We managed to grab you for like an hour on a Monday night, because when that's your day off. So I'm conscious that you're probably going to go put the wee man to bed, and just want to say thank you very much for your time, and it's been a great podcast, Daz.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dino.
As always, thank you so much for listening to the Pop Pod this week. If you'd like to leave a review or share the podcast with others, then that'd be awesome. You'll find us on Instagram at the Pop Pod, and on Facebook we have a community group called Purpose to Progress that anyone can join. And we'll be back every Monday with a new episode, but until then, stay on purpose, and we'll see you next week.